It's good to be King Trump. Metaphorically, I swear. But President Trump did get a golden crown from South Korea's president, and that's in addition to the big deal he inked with Seoul. Plus, Amazon's in the midst of massive layoffs, but the way they're going about it may surprise you, or not. Honestly, it all feels very on brand for Bezos. And if you work there, might want to check your phone right about now. And there's a comet whizzing by Earth, or is there? A Harvard scientist is claiming NASA's hiding key data about an interstellar object, whatever it may be. Those stories and more today, Thursday, October 30th. I'm Caitlin Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. The Post gets action. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, the guy taking the heat for not providing enough Democrat votes to open the government, took to the Senate floor to respond to Wednesday's New York Post cover, which creatively read, "They don't give a chuck," as the ongoing shutdown risks food aid for 43 million Americans. Schumer focused specifically on pushing to bring a bill to the floor that would only fund food stamps, and thus would clear up the issue of tens of millions of hungry Americans, while the rest of the issues holding up progress remain at a stalemate.
There's a bill right now from Senator Hawley, a Republican, a conservative Republican, that could ensure SNAP is funded. It has Republican and Democratic support. It's a bill I'd happily support and vote for.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune has so far requested calls for smaller spending bills after Democrats voted 13 times to keep the government shut down. And it's not just food stamps that get hit at the end of the month. Air traffic controllers have been told not to expect their paychecks. At one of the country's busiest airports, Newark, a ground stop halted all flights for more than an hour due to staffing issues pegged to the shutdown. Congressional staffers who've been working through this shutdown have also been told not to expect their paychecks. LOL, OMG, you up? These are messages you might expect to get via text. You're fired is not one of them. Well, no one told Jeff Bezos. Amazon is laying off a whopping 14,000 employees, and at least some of them reportedly learned their fate via text message. Classy. Business Insider first reported the move, claiming that Amazon sent affected workers 2 messages early Tuesday when the layoffs began. One message urged employees to check both their personal and work emails before coming into the office, because that's not ominous. This was apparently so they wouldn't show up at the office to find out that they were let go because their badges didn't work. Woof. That is ice cold. The second text might have been worse. The second text told employees to call the help desk if they had not received a, quote, email message about your role. Being laid off sucks, but being texted by your job and instructed to then call said job to see if you still had said job, that's just rude. What's worse, this could be just the beginning. The reduction in workforce, which HR says is aimed at cleaning up bureaucracy, could, according to Reuters, land 30,000 people or 9% of the company on the unemployment line over the next few weeks. Even more cuts are expected in January once the busy holiday shopping season is over. Santa doesn't need to check twice. Bezos is no doubt on the naughty list. President Putin's special envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, told an investment conference in Saudi Arabia this week that Russia's war with Ukraine is nearing its end, despite that breakdown of diplomacy between Putin and President Trump. Putin's deputy said, quote, "We are sure that we are on the road to peace, and as peacemakers, we need to make it happen." He then added that he believed the war would be over within a year, which sounds oddly optimistic from the Kremlin, considering how violent things have been recently. The economic envoy also suggested his country did not want the conflict to escalate beyond the borders of the two countries. Well, someone should tell President Putin that, because testing his, quote, and big air quotes again, invincible nuclear missile is not really something you do when you're trying to avoid provoking other world powers. He did, however, admit on that topic, quote, "We have to do better than we've been doing." You don't say. New York mayoral frontrunner Zoran Mamdani got an October surprise this week when a campaign finance watchdog group filed 2 criminal referrals to the Department of Justice alleging Mamdani's campaign received $13,000 from at least 170 foreign donors. And that's a no-no. The Federal Election Campaign Act says that it's illegal to, quote, accept or receive campaign contributions from foreign nationals in any federal, state, or local election. The Coolidge-Reagan Foundation, that's the group behind the claims, they allege that Mamdani's campaign demonstrated a, quote, systematic failure to comply with campaign finance laws. The campaign took in cash from Australia, Turkey, France, Canada, Germany, and even a donation from Mamdani's mother-in-law in Dubai. Now, the foundation has previously filed complaints like this this one against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Hillary Clinton, and the Democratic National Committee. With less than a week until Election Day, the Post City Hall bureau chief, Craig McCarthy, is following all the threads of Mamdani's campaign closely, and he joins me now. Craig, for starters, tell me about what the Coolidge-Reagan Foundation is claiming and how serious could this actually be for Mamdani's campaign?
So what they're claiming is they're citing our reporting from earlier this month, in which one of our reporters had found that $13,000 of the campaign funds that have been donated to the Mamdani campaign have come from outside the country, which means just people with foreign addresses. So they have since returned some of that money. Yesterday, we've reported that they've returned up to $9,000 of that money. What question in here is that you can only be a U.S. citizen and donate, but you can also then be a U.S. citizen and live abroad. So the question is parsing through which of those donations are actually legal and which aren't.
Yeah, that was actually, you just answered my next question. My best friend lives in Europe, but she's a US citizen, so it's like her address wouldn't be there, but it looks like it's coming from there. So it does seem like there's an extra layer of digging that needs to happen. Has there been any reaction from the DA or the Department of Justice?
I mean, so far it has been radio silence from the DA or the DOJ as if this is going to get any traction here. And I mean, I think what they're kind of pulling on the thread is looking at something similar that happened to our currently sitting mayor, Eric Adams, in which a lot of his campaign donations came from overseas. However, not a lot, I would say a chunk of them. But there was a little bit of a different layer in that one where it's called a straw donor scam, which you kind of package a bunch of donations together to make them look legitimate because they come from somebody else, and then but the original funds come from overseas. And I think an important part of that is talking about, how serious this is. Well, I mean, unless the Manhattan DA picks it up, it really doesn't seem like it's going to pick up at all, because the DOJ would have to find something else that was a crime. So in that Eric Adams case, and why I bring that up is that there were underlying crimes that they had accused him of, in which is how they packaged the state law and be able to cite that as a violation, even though it technically was not a federal violation.
So how are the donations given? This seems such I don't know, minor or not minor, but minute. They're just these small donations. They're given to a certain campaign. Legally, how does this all work? If money is just sent to a campaign, I can't imagine the campaign can control what comes in, what doesn't, where it comes in. So what is the legality here?
Well, I think that you bring up an amazing point that we are actually touched on yesterday with our story when we followed up on this, is that, we have Curtis Lewa got $70 from out overseas. We had Cuomo who got just over $1,100 from overseas. But these are, again, the addresses that are associated with those donations. And again, and how the system works is a bit of trust and then verify, and then we audit, and then those audits take years. I mean, we're still looking at audits from the Mayor Eric Adams campaign from 2021, and they're still not finalized. And that's not even because of any stonewalling from the Adams campaign. It was still going on as of last year before the criminal investigation. So, and there's still other campaigns that have still not finished their audits. So as you're saying, it's these donations come in, and then they're taken, and then they are sent through, and then they are verified. It takes a few weeks to verify, and then again they have to be audited to even see if then, I guess, another layer of checks and balances.
This does not seem like the world's most efficient system as you're laying it out here. It really doesn't. Now, I just want to ask you one more thing about Mamdani. He's a proud member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and despite him leading in the polls, the group's New York City chapter is nervous. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? I would think they would be thrilled running into it with the way things are looking.
I mean, I would honestly say I think they are thrilled. As an organization, the DSA is very small. The fact that they even have a mayoral candidate and that he did so well in the primary is, I mean, historic and stunning to everybody in this upset with the political folks. The issue here is that his agenda, the vast majority, or I'd say maybe, I think it's 60 to 70% of New Yorkers don't agree with everything in his far left agenda. And also, even if they do, they don't believe that it's potentially obtainable. So you have this candidate who is going to get elected, likely going to get elected, considering all the polls that have come out over the last 24 hours. But without 50% of support. And without that, or having more than that, there's a concern among the GSA that they're not going to have a mandate. And that's going to be the pushback. And what the business community has been telling me, real estate community as well, for about since the primary, is that they're only hoping that this is not a blowout and where it's a 60 and then Curtis Sliwa and Andrew Cuomo get 20 and 20, and then he comes with 60% of the vote and considers, well, the majority of voters, elected me, so I have given the green light to enact my mandate.
So it's not just, this seems to be the case with any election around the country, large, small, local, national. It's not enough just to win. You have to win enough of a plurality in order to enact the campaign promises that you made along the way. And those things don't always happen together.
Yeah, and I would add too, I think it's also a little bit less about maybe the people that he's governing as it is in a lot of other municipalities or any other cities or stuff like that. He has to be able to put pressure on places like Albany, because a lot of his things and a lot of the promises that he has, he needs them to work with him. He needs some little law changes as well as some very big law changes, like increasing taxes and then making sure all of those taxes go to one singular place, which is New York City. There's a lot of things that he needs. And as part of what they admitted, the DSA chapter heads had, said in a podcast yesterday, in which they were saying that they need to put the pressure on somebody like Kathy Hochul, who is adamantly saying she's not going to raise taxes on the rich. But on Sunday, she was nearly booed off stage and chanted off stage by chants of tax the rich. Now, they welcomed that, and they said that it also helps her, I guess, see the movement in these things. But again, if he comes with 43% of the vote, and she's going into an election year, that doesn't help her with the downstate vote to enact some of these policies, because there's clearly not a massive backing behind him, even though he is the front runner of the pack of three people here.
Yeah, and nationally, as we look forward to midterms and then another presidential election in a few years, Mayor Mamdani and the efficacy of that administration will say a lot for the Dems about where the party itself is going. So there is just so many different layers to this. And Craig McCarthy, I know I'm going to have you back between now and Election Day, which is right around the corner. So thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, have me anytime.
Donald Trump got a king's welcome in South Korea on Wednesday, literally. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung presented President Trump with a giant gold crown and a medal signifying the country's highest honor. And we all know how the president feels about gold. One glimpse at the Oval Office will tell you he loves it. The South Korean leader said the award recognized Trump's efforts to improve relations with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Now, after the ceremony, the pair shared lunch, which included a take on the president's favorite food, mini beef patties with ketchup. So between the crown and the lunch, does that make President Trump the Burger King? Nope, I'm not sorry. That really wrote itself. But on a more serious and important note, the two presidents inked a historic trade deal. South Korea is set to purchase $50 billion worth of Boeing planes and GE engines, 3.3 million tons of American natural gas per year, and invest in U.S. energy infrastructure. In return, the United States will lower tariffs on South Korea from 25% to 15%. President Trump also announced that the U.S. would share technology to allow South Korea to build a nuclear submarine, which they're going to do in the Philadelphia shipyards. The entire deal is valued at about $350 billion. And finally today, the truth is out there. Remember that comet the size of Manhattan that was going to hit the Earth, then it wasn't, then maybe it was, and now it really isn't? Well, a Harvard scientist named Avi Loeb is blasting NASA for withholding critical information about the intergalactic object, which honestly doesn't sound very comforting. Loeb was on Joe Rogan's podcast discussing how the comet didn't behave like a comet. I won't bore you with the sciencey science here, but it has to do with emissions and its lack of a comet tail. The best image of the object was apparently taken on October 2nd by NASA, and Loeb says they've not responded to his request for its release. Pics or it didn't happen, It should also be noted that NASA took the photo a day after the government shutdown sent most of their staff home, so yeah. And if we're being honest, NASA isn't Loeb's biggest biggest fan when it comes to this topic, a bevy of scientists say he's wrong. It's definitely a comet, and it's definitely not some sort of alien technology, which is what Loeb suggested. Though he is changing his tune a little there. When asked again if he believes NASA is hiding some sensational data, he said, quote, "It's much more likely not to be related to extraterrestrial intelligence, but to terrestrial stupidity." Human stupidity? That I can definitely believe. But what do you think? I honestly don't know when it comes to this, but if the aliens get us between now and tomorrow, you're going to want to like and follow the New York Postcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, because the First Contact episode will be epic. I promise.